Welcome back, guys, and today we're going to be taking another dive into one of my favorite additions to franchise mode for Madden 20, which is Fog of War. In my last video, we took a look at how it could be expanded upon from its current application with dev traits, and today we take a look at how it could be expanded beyond that and how Fog of War could be applied to player ratings. And this is something that I covered last year in a Madden 19 wishlist video, which was actually one of the first videos on my channel, and this video is going to be very similar to that because the idea is more or less the same as it was then, and that idea is that similar to how a player needs snaps to unlock his dev trait, a player would also need snaps or practice time to unlock his numeric ratings. So if you remember Madden 12, they had it to where basically you had little to no idea of what any of your rookie ratings were, and as you played through preseason, more of those ratings would be revealed, and then at the end of preseason, you'd know exactly what you had, and this is basically going to be an expansion of that. A couple of things that I didn't really like with that system was, one, it was too short. It only covered the preseason. So what I'm going to propose today is going to be more of a slow burn than something that only lasts those 4 preseason games. And then the other thing was something that I talked about a little bit last video, which is that in Madden 12, a lot of times you'd just be completely blind on players and ratings would just be question marks. And I've never really been a fan of that approach because it feels like it's just blind for the sake of being blind. And remember, this is called Fog of War, not Pitch Black of War. So starting out here, we're going to break down ratings into 4 different tiers of knowledge, with each tier becoming a more clear and precise picture of a player, starting here with basic knowledge, which is going to consist of purely letter grades, so A, B, C, D, and F, which is going to encompass a pretty wide range of attributes within each. A, for example, could be as high as 99 and as low as 87. B could be as high as 91 and as low as 75, and so on. And I think that overlap there is important because something that's rated a 90 could actually be represented as either an A or a B, so it just adds that extra little layer of uncertainty there as well. And the basic premise here is that at this point you have a very basic outline of what the player is, and this is how all rookies would come into the league. So rather than going the Madden 12 route and having a bunch of guys just having question marks and knowing virtually nothing about them, you'll still have that basic outline of the player no matter what, without knowing exactly what he is the second that he's drafted, which is how it currently works in Madden. From there, once a player reaches a certain threshold of practice or playing time, you would reach the second tier, which is going to be intermediate knowledge, and this is going to take you from strictly letter grades to now letter grades along with plus or minus designations. And what that's going to do is narrow down that possible range that an attribute could be, giving you a slightly more clear picture of that player and his abilities. Again here though, there's still going to be some overlap even within those designations. So to use that example of something being rated a 90, where before it may appear as either an A or a B, it could now potentially be represented as an A minus or a B plus. And again, that's just to create that added layer of mystery. Then again, once the player reaches another benchmark of practice or playing time, you reach the third tier, which is advanced knowledge, and this is going to be where you start to unlock some of those true numeric ratings, but they're still going to be mixed in with those letter grades with the plus minus designations. So once again here, you're getting a much more defined picture of the player, but still with a slight bit of mystery there. And that brings me to the final tier, which is going to be complete knowledge, and this is going to be the true numeric ratings that we all know and are used to, and a complete and clear picture of exactly what the player is. One last thing here is that you probably noticed that physical ratings aren't something that would be included in this. Those are something that are more quantifiable, and it wouldn't really make sense to have a wide letter range for a guy that runs a 4.3 40, and there's a couple different ways this could be handled. One is to just show the exact numeric ratings from the beginning, which I'm completely fine with, but then if you still wanted to have a little bit of Fog of War with those, you could just show their combine stats like you do with scouting in place of the numeric ratings to create a bit more mystery there as well. So that by itself I think would be something that works just fine, but as with everything, I try to add another layer or level to things, and in this case it would come in the form of separating how players could be viewed by their own team versus how the league would view them. And the idea here would be that players would get awarded snaps through practice towards the next knowledge threshold, but those snaps would only count towards the threshold for the team that he is on. It's not going to be a significant amount, but it would add up over time and would give you the ability to identify your own players quicker than the other teams around the league would be able to. So let's say you sign an undrafted free agent. Every down he plays during the preseason is going to count universally for both you and the rest of the league. At the end of preseason, let's say he's played 80 snaps total and then had those 4 weeks of practice as well. For each week he practices, he gets, let's say, 15 snaps, but like I said, those snaps will only count for your team. So while every other team, his counter is at 80, yours would be at 140 because because of those 15 snaps of practice per week. So let's say you cut him, but he spends the whole year on your practice squad. Each week that he practices during the season, he's going to continuously get those 15 snaps, and by the end of the year, you're probably going to be at tier 2 or maybe tier 3, while every other team in the league will still be at tier 1 with only those 80 preseason snaps to go off of. Then to continue with that example, let's say he plays again the next preseason and then spends another full season on your practice squad. At that point, you're more than likely going to have full knowledge of his numeric ratings and know exactly what he is because he's played in 8 preseason games on your team and then had those 2 full seasons of practice on your roster, and your coaches at that point are going to more or less know exactly what he is. Meanwhile, another team really only has those 8 preseason games of tape to go off of, so while you see numeric ratings, another team would still probably at best be at letter grades with plus-minus designations. And what this does is it kind of changes how you have to approach multiple areas of the game and roster management. Suddenly, veterans and players within your organization become more known commodities and thus are more valuable than younger players from other organizations that you may know very little about. Currently, if you have a 70 overall player, it's easy to just go to the free agent list and immediately identify and pick up a better player. Or if you draft a similar player that is, say, a 71 overall, that decision becomes known pretty much the instant that player is drafted. But with a Fog of War system, you now have more to consider, and that decision might end up being based off what the players actually do on the field rather than simply because one says 71 and another says 70. Then with the practice versus playtime idea, I think there's a lot of potential for something like that to play into free agency and trades and create a more interesting dynamic there as well, where certain players that didn't see much playing time over the course of their rookie contract would still be largely unknown to a good part of the league. And then if restricted free agency was ever to become a thing within franchise mode, I think this would also enhance something like that even more as well. And then lastly, the example I always use for why I feel like this is a good idea is the draft. Let's say you're a team in desperate need of a quarterback. Under the current system, you take a quarterback that you scouted, and then you're immediately notified that he's, let's say, a 62 overall with normal dev. In real life, the team isn't going to know that, or they wouldn't even sign the player. Do you think if the Chargers drafted Ryan Leaf and knew immediately that he was a 52 overall with normal dev that he would have started day one? Probably not. And while in reality, the team is more than likely going to be tied to that quarterback for the next several years, in Madden, you're probably not even tied to a quarterback like that until your next draft pick. You immediately know that a 62 overall with normal dev isn't going to go anywhere. So what do you do with your next pick? You probably take another quarterback, and that's not really something that's realistic or practical. And I think that's what's kind of unique about something like this, is that it has the ability to make certain tasks within franchise mode maybe not necessarily better, but more interesting and requiring more thought, which is something that I really want to see when it comes to the mode, because it seems like the majority of the time decisions are so obvious and binary rather than coming with any kind of risk, and that's all done just by changing how ratings would be displayed. And as I wrap up here, one important thing with this is that with anything like this, and basically with pretty much everything that I propose, I would want to see it be an option. Not everybody is going to want to have to wait and see what they got in the draft. Not everybody is going to enjoy trying to make trades for or sign partially unknown commodities, and I get that. And as I said last video, it's something that always has to be considered. Everybody prefers different things and plays different ways, so I always feel like options should be available for users to tailor their experience to their liking, whether they're looking for a more simple, straightforward approach or if they're looking for a more in-depth and realistic approach. Both sides should have options available to play to their liking. But I think that's just about gonna do it. I was gonna get into some other things like how coaching staffs could affect something like this even further, but I wanted to keep things pretty straightforward rather than going too far off onto what things could look like way down the line. But let me know what you guys think of this, and if it's something you would enjoy seeing within franchise mode, and anything you might change, as well as any ideas you guys have for how you'd like to see Fog of War applied to player ratings. And then as we try to kill time before Madden 20, I'm actually debating on finishing up the Riverhog season, but if I do that, the videos would likely be in a condensed form similar to how I did preseason, where I go over 3 or 4 games worth of highlights at a time. But if that is something you guys would like to see and are interested in seeing, let me know down in the comments and I can probably make that happen. But as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in and hope you enjoyed the video and what you watched today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and until next time, thanks for watching.